After betrayal, she escapes, only to fall for a millionaire CEO stranger. Then she gave him triplet part 2. Welcome back, my incredible, loyal, and loving family. You've been blowing up the comments asking for more of Nora and Damien's intense journey, and today is the day you've been waiting for. If you thought their unexpected love story was passionate before, just wait until you see how 3 tiny heartbeats change everything. For those just joining us, hit pause right now and watch part 1 first. You can find it in the description. Trust me, you need that emotional foundation to fully appreciate the wild ride ahead. And for my loyal viewers who've been counting down the days for this sequel, get ready for heart-pounding revelations, soul-deep passion, and dangers that will test this couple's love to its absolute limits. Drop a big love if you're ready to see how Nora and Damien handle the beautiful chaos of triplets while facing threats from both their pasts. And don't forget to subscribe. This family doesn't want to lose a single member of our storytelling journey together. Now let's begin. 18 months later, dawn broke over the Mediterranean, bathing the stone terrace in golden light. Nora Jensen stood at the railing, coffee warming her hands as she watched the first fishing boats venture out from the harbor below. The Spanish coastal village had settled into its early morning rhythm, bakers' vans making deliveries, elderly men gathering at the cafe that Damien had sold shortly after they'd purchased this cliffside home. Their home, still a surreal concept even 18 months after they'd made the decision to split their time between New York and Spain. The academic year found them in Manhattan, where Nora's financial ethics program at NYU had quickly become one of the business school's most sought-after specializations. Summers and holidays belonged to this place, 3,000 square feet of terracotta floors, whitewashed walls, and sweeping sea views that became more precious with each passing season. Mama? The small voice behind her belonged to Sophia, the most verbal of their 9-month-old triplets. Mama. Nora turned to find her daughter pulling herself up against one of the terrace chairs, dark curls framing a face that was a perfect blend of her parents, Nora's green eyes, Damien's olive complexion, and an expression of determined curiosity that was entirely her own. "Good morning, little explorer," Nora said, setting her coffee aside to scoop up the baby. "Did you escape the bedroom again?" She had help. Damien appeared in the doorway, the other 2 infants balanced expertly in his arms. After 9 months of parenthood, he handled their 3 babies with the same calm precision he'd once applied to security operations. Lucas decided 5:30 a.m. was an excellent time for a diaper explosion, which woke Elena, and then Sophia heard the commotion and staged a jailbreak while I was cleaning him up. Nora kissed Sophia's forehead, breathing in the sweet baby scent that still made her heart constrict with wonder. The triplets had been the universe's most unexpected gift, conceived during their first month of marriage when they'd believed Nora's age and previous reproductive health challenges made pregnancy unlikely, if not impossible. The shock of learning they were expecting had been eclipsed only by the ultrasound technician's stunned announcement, "I'm seeing 3 distinct heartbeats. Triplets. 3 perfect, unexpected miracles who had transformed their carefully calibrated life together into beautiful chaos." "Here," Damien said, transferring Elena to Nora's free arm with practiced ease. At 9 months, their smallest triplet still preferred being held to exploring, content to observe the world with solemn brown eyes that miss nothing. "I'll start breakfast if you want to feed them." Nora nodded, settling into the cushioned love seat with a baby on each side. Lucas cleaned and changed, squirmed in his father's arms, reaching toward the birds circling overhead. "Someone's energetic this morning," she observed, as Damien placed him on the blanket they kept permanently spread across the terrace tiles. "He slept 6 straight hours last night. A new record." Damien's smile still carried traces of disbelief when he looked at their children, as if he couldn't quite believe they existed. At 46, fatherhood had come to him unexpectedly late, a gift he'd long ago stopped believing possible during his years in conflict zones. As he moved into the kitchen, Nora watched Lucas army crawl toward the collection of wooden toys they kept on the terrace. 9 months into parenting triplets, they'd learned to create child-friendly zones throughout the house rather than trying to contain 3 increasingly mobile infants in designated areas. "We made it," Damien said quietly, returning with fruit and bread. The simple statement had become their daily affirmation, acknowledging both the joy and overwhelming challenge of raising 3 infants born 6 weeks premature, and initially so fragile that the doctors hadn't been certain all would survive. "Another day, another victory," Nora agreed, accepting a piece of orange while still balancing both girls. They'd learned to feed each other during the early weeks, when having a free hand was a luxury neither could consistently manage. The peaceful morning routine continued, Damien preparing breakfast while watching Lucas, Nora nursing the girls, both parents exchanging information about the day ahead. Unlike their harried New York schedule, summers in Spain allowed them an unhurried pace that felt essential with 3 infants. "Laura's coming at 9, Nora reminded him, referencing their part-time nanny, a retired teacher from the village who had become an essential part of their support system. "I need to finish the curriculum revisions for fall, and you have that video call with Geneva at 11? Damien nodded, pouring more coffee. "The program director wants to discuss expanding the peacekeeping training to include cyber threats. Apparently my unique perspective is valuable." The slight sarcasm in his tone made Nora smile. Despite his exceptional qualifications, Damien remained uncomfortable with academic recognition, preferring practical application to theoretical discourse. "Your perspective is invaluable," she corrected, shifting Elena to her shoulder for burping. "The UN is lucky to have you, even part-time." Their complementary professional transitions had been unexpectedly smooth. Nora discovered she loved teaching more than trading, finding deep satisfaction in helping future financial leaders understand the ethical implications of their decisions. Damien's security expertise, translated into conflict prevention strategies for international peacekeepers, allowed him to leverage his experience while maintaining the distance from direct operations that had become essential to his peace of mind. The unexpected pregnancy and subsequent birth of triplets had complicated their carefully designed balance, but not derailed it. They'd adjusted, creating a life that accommodated both their professional commitments and the intensified demands of parenthood. "I've been thinking," Damien said, joining her on the love seat and taking Elena from her arms. "We should consider staying in Spain through October this year." Nora looked up, surprised. "What about the fall semester? My classes start in 3 weeks. You mentioned your department approved remote teaching for the first 8 weeks if needed, and my UN work is location independent until the November conference." He hesitated. "The babies are thriving here, Nora. The air, the routine, the space. It feels cruel to disrupt that for Manhattan's concrete and noise just yet." The suggestion touched on a conversation they'd been circling for months. Their original plan, dividing time between New York and Spain, had been conceived before 3 newborns transformed every logistical consideration into a complex equation. "You're right," she admitted, watching Lucas determinedly push himself up to sitting position. "They are different here. Calmer, healthier. The triplets' premature birth had left them vulnerable to respiratory issues that seemed to ease in the Mediterranean climate. The constant medical appointments that punctuated their New York existence faded during their Spanish sojourns, replaced by normal developmental milestones and fewer anxieties. "We could fly back for your mid-semester assessments," Damien continued, his tone careful. "I could take the babies 1 weekend each month so you could handle in-person requirements without dragging everyone back and forth." The thoughtfulness of his planning touched her. Despite the pregnancy's unplanned nature and the shock of triplets, Damien had never once suggested her career should take a backseat to motherhood. Instead, he'd consistently searched for solutions that allowed her professional identity to coexist with their expanding family. "Let me contact the department chair today," she agreed, leaning against his shoulder as Sophia dozed off in her arms. "I think you're right. Extending our time here makes sense for everyone." The peaceful moment lingered, 3 sleeping babies and the Mediterranean stretched before them, until Nora's phone vibrated on the table. She glanced at the screen, expecting her assistant or perhaps her sister Natalie. Instead, Sebastian Porter's name glowed accusingly. "We need to talk. Urgently. Information has surfaced that affects you directly. Meeting in Barcelona tomorrow, 2 p.m., Hotel Arts. This isn't about us. It's about Damien. SB, 18 months since their confrontation in that Barcelona hotel. 18 months of silence after Sebastian's financial manipulations had been exposed, forcing his resignation from Prescott Capital and effective banishment from legitimate financial circles." Nora's body tensed instinctively, the visceral reaction to his name still powerful despite the distance and healing time it provided. "What is it?" Damien asked, instantly alert to her changed demeanor. She hesitated, then passed him the phone. His expression remained neutral as he read the message, though she noticed the slight tightening around his eyes, the only tell he ever displayed when truly concerned. "Interesting timing," he said finally, returning the phone. The UN security clearance renewal was just completed last week. The implication hung between them. Sebastian's sudden reappearance, specifically mentioning Damien, suggested he had obtained information during the background investigation process, information he believed valuable enough to leverage for a meeting. "I'm not going," Nora said firmly, pressing a kiss to Sophia's head. "Whatever game he's playing, I won't participate." Damien's gaze remained on the horizon, his thinking face in full effect. He wouldn't reach out without something substantial. Sebastian's manipulative but not stupid. You think I should meet him? The question emerged with more edge than intended. I think information is power, he replied carefully. And I prefer knowing what threats exist rather than waiting for them to materialize unexpectedly. The security operative's perspective, Nora realized. Always better to engage potential dangers on your own terms than be caught unprepared. She considered the triplets, now peacefully sleeping, unaware of complications from their parents' past lives. I'll go with you, Damien continued. Not to the meeting itself, that would only escalate whatever he's planning. But nearby, accessible if needed. The familiar partnership in his approach steadied her. Unlike Sebastian, who had controlled through manipulation, Damien supported without imposing, offering protection while respecting her agency. All right, she agreed reluctantly. But at the first sign this is just another manipulation, I'm walking away. Damien nodded, taking her free hand and squeezing it gently. And I'll be right there when you do. The moment of tension dissipated as Lucas suddenly let out a squeal of triumph, having successfully pulled himself to standing using the terrace railing. Damien moved quickly to secure him, pride evident in his expression. Look at you, champion, he murmured, steadying the baby who bounced excitedly at his achievement. Conquering new territory already. Watching them, this man who had faced death in conflict zones now celebrating his son's wobbly stance, Nora felt renewed certainty. Whatever Sebastian had discovered, whatever new challenge awaited them in Barcelona tomorrow, they would face it as they'd faced everything. Since meeting 18 months ago, together, stronger for the partnership they'd built and the family they'd created. The Hotel Arts Barcelona rose 44 stories above the Mediterranean, a gleaming tower of glass that dominated the Olympic Port District. Nora crossed the marble-floored lobby, her professional armor fully deployed, black sheath dress, minimal jewelry, hair swept into a sleek knot. The familiar costume of Prescott Capital's most formidable negotiator felt strange after months of casual seaside attire and baby-friendly practicality. Sebastian waited in the designated bar, predictably positioned to command the best view and most flattering lighting. 18 months had changed him. He'd lost weight and gray, threaded his temples where only salt and pepper had been before. His custom suit couldn't quite disguise a diminished quality to his posture. Nora. He stood as she approached, extending his hand as if they were business associates rather than former lovers whose relationship had imploded in betrayal. Thank you for coming. You said it was urgent, she replied, ignoring his hand and taking the seat across from him. I'm listening. Sebastian signaled for service before settling back in his chair, studying her with an expression that mixed calculation with something that might have been regret. Motherhood suits you, he observed. You look fulfilled. The personal comment set her teeth on edge. I didn't come for small talk, Sebastian. You mentioned information about Damien. A waiter appeared, and Sebastian ordered himself scotch before raising an eyebrow at Nora. Still Sauvignon Blanc? Sparkling water, she corrected, refusing to be drawn into the familiar pattern where he controlled even minor details like drink selection. When the waiter departed, Sebastian leaned forward. You've built quite the life for yourself. University position, coastal property, security consultant husband with UN credentials, and what, 3 children now? Quite the transformation from the woman who ruled Prescott's Asia division. If you've been investigating us, you already know all this, Nora replied, keeping her voice level despite the unsettling realization that Sebastian had been monitoring their lives. Get to the point. He reached into his briefcase, withdrawing a slim folder. Have you ever heard of Operation Kingfisher? The name meant nothing to Nora, but something in his tone, a calculated casualness, triggered her internal alarm. No. Damascus, 2017, Sebastian continued, opening the folder. A highly classified extraction of a Syrian chemical weapons scientist and his family. 3 operatives killed, 2 critically wounded. Officially, the operation never existed. Nora maintained a neutral expression, though her mind raced. Damien had mentioned Damascus as the location of his near-fatal injury, the incident that had prompted his exit from security work. Your husband was team leader. Sebastian slid a photograph across the table, grainy, clearly taken from surveillance footage. But unmistakably Damien, younger and in tactical gear, conferring with 2 other men outside a nondescript building. What he likely hasn't told you is that the scientist wasn't just being extracted, he was being silenced. Meaning what, exactly? Nora kept her voice steady, despite the chill spreading through her chest. Meaning your husband wasn't just security, he was an executioner. Sebastian's expression held manufactured concern. The scientist had been developing nerve agents for the regime, then offered to sell his research to Western intelligence agencies. The extraction was a cover for elimination, ensuring his knowledge died with him. Nora stared at the photograph, mind working through implications. If this operation was as classified as you claim, how did you access this information? Sebastian smiled thinly. Let's just say my fall from Prescott created certain connections with people who operate in gray areas. Information is currency in those circles. And what exactly do you hope to gain by sharing this? Nora asked, pushing the photograph back toward him. Your husband obtained top-level security clearance with the UN by presenting a sanitized version of his operational history, Sebastian replied. If certain details of Kingfisher became public, those credentials would be immediately revoked. His career, your comfortable arrangement, all of it would collapse. The threat emerged with practiced precision. Sebastian had always excelled at identifying leverage points and exploiting them methodically. You still haven't answered my question, Nora pressed. What do you want? Sebastian closed the folder deliberately. Your financial expertise and connections, applied discreetly to a new venture I'm developing in emerging markets, countries with flexible regulatory environments. You want me to help you launder money, Nora translated flatly. I want you to provide strategic guidance to a legitimate alternative investment structure, he corrected smoothly. 3 hours a week, remotely, extremely well compensated. In exchange, this information remains buried. The familiar pattern emerged clearly. Sebastian had lost his position at Prescott, but not his ambition or ruthlessness. Unable to operate within legitimate financial channels after his disgrace, he had simply shifted to shadowy alternatives, now attempting to acquire her expertise through blackmail. I need time to verify what you've told me, she said, gathering her purse. And to discuss this with my husband. Sebastian's smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course, but I'll need your answer within 72 hours. My investors require certainty. As Nora stood to leave, he added, one more thing. I wouldn't recommend taking this to any authorities. The information comes from sources that would create complications for everyone involved, including your husband. The veiled threat hung in the air as she walked away, maintaining the measured pace and straight posture that had once been her signature in Prescott's executive floors. Only when the elevator doors closed did she allow herself to exhale fully, the tremor in her hands finally visible. Damien waited in their agreed location, a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the hotel. One look at her face told him everything he needed to know. That bad? He asked quietly as she slid into the chair opposite him. Operation Kingfisher, she said simply. Damascus, 2017. The color drained from his face, confirmation enough that Sebastian's information wasn't entirely fabricated. How does he know about that? He claims to have connections in intelligence circles now. People who trade in classified information. She studied his expression, searching for something to contradict Sebastian's version. He says you weren't just extracting a scientist, you were eliminating him. Damien's gaze shifted to the street beyond the cafe window, his expression unreadable. What else did he say? That if the details became public, your UN security clearance would be revoked. Your career destroyed. She paused. He wants my financial expertise for what sounds like a money laundering operation. My silence and cooperation in exchange for burying the information. The silence between them stretched uncomfortably, filled with unspoken questions. When Damien finally spoke, his voice was carefully measured. What do you want to know? The simple question, direct without defensiveness, reminded Nora why she trusted this man from the beginning. Unlike Sebastian's calculated evasions, Damien faced difficult truths directly. Everything, she replied. Whatever happened in Damascus, I need to know if I'm being manipulated again. Damien nodded once, then signaled for the check. Not here. Let's walk. They moved along Barcelona's waterfront, the familiar Mediterranean Sea stretching endlessly before them, until they found a secluded bench away from tourist traffic. For several minutes, Damien simply stared at the horizon, organizing thoughts he'd clearly hoped would remain buried in his past. Kingfisher was officially classified as an extraction, he began finally. A Syrian scientist who had been developing chemical weapons for the regime claimed he wanted to defect with his research. Intelligence agencies were eager for his knowledge, both to understand what Syria possessed and to prevent it from spreading to terrorist organizations. He paused, lines deepening around his eyes. My team was assigned to get him and his family out through Lebanon. Standard procedure, or so we were told. But it wasn't, Nora prompted when he fell silent. The intelligence was compromised from the start. We walked into an ambush. His voice took on a distant quality. 3 of my team died immediately. The scientist was wounded but alive. His wife and daughter were unharmed. Damien rubbed absently at the scar on his forearm, one of many marks his body carried from that day. We managed to reach the secondary extraction point with them, where we were supposed to transfer them to another team. Instead, a single operative arrived. With new orders, the scientist was too great a security risk alive. His knowledge couldn't be allowed to reach any government, even allegedly friendly ones. They wanted you to kill him, Nora whispered, the full implications of Sebastian's accusation becoming clear. Damien nodded, his expression grim. Along with his family, no witnesses. The official record would show they died in the initial ambush. Did you do it? The question emerged before she could consider its weight. His eyes met hers directly. No. I refused the order. Relief flooded Nora, followed immediately by confusion. Then why would Sebastian think this information could harm you? Because I didn't stop it either, Damien admitted, the words clearly painful. When I refused, the operative who delivered the orders executed the scientist himself. I managed to get the wife and daughter away before he could eliminate them too. Understanding dawned, slowly. You disobeyed direct orders. I committed treason, technically speaking. Compromised a classified operation, helped civilians escape against explicit instructions. His laugh held no humor. I was critically injured in the process, the scar on my back. The operative reported me as killed in action when he couldn't find me. But you survived, Nora said softly, pieces falling into place. And the wife and daughter? Canada, with new identities. I made contact through secure channels once I recovered, ensured they were safe. He exhaled slowly. By then, the official record showed the entire family had died in Syria. Easier for everyone to maintain that fiction. So you weren't an executioner, Nora clarified. You were the opposite. You saved them. At the cost of my career, my identity, and nearly my life. Damien turned to face her fully. But if Sebastian has actual documentation of Kingfisher, he's right about one thing. It would end my UN position immediately. Not because I followed orders, but because I defied them. The revelation settled between them, not the dark secret Sebastian had implied, but a moral stand with profound consequences. Nora reached for his hand, finding it cold despite the warm day. Why didn't you tell me this before? She asked, genuine curiosity rather than accusation. Initially because it was classified beyond anything I could legally discuss. His fingers tightened around hers. Later, because I wanted to be just Damien with you, not defined by the worst day of my professional life. And then the babies came and it seemed irrelevant to who we had become together. Nora nodded, understanding the desire to separate past identities from present connections. Hadn't she done the same, rarely discussing her Prescott years once they'd built their new life? Sebastian has given us 72 hours to decide, she said. He expects me to help him structure what sounds like illegal financial operations in exchange for his silence. Damien's expression hardened. He's misjudged you if he thinks you'd participate in financial fraud, regardless of the pressure. He's misjudged both of us, Nora corrected. The question is what we do now. They sat in silence, watching gulls wheel above the harbor, each considering implications and options. Finally, Damien spoke. We have 3 choices, he said with the clarity of someone accustomed to strategic decisions under pressure. We can comply temporarily while seeking leverage of our own. We can refuse and accept the consequences to my career. Or we can remove Sebastian's ability to threaten us altogether. The last option carried an undertone that raised the hair on Nora's arms. Meaning what, exactly? Information is his weapon, Damien explained. We need to neutralize both the information and his motivation to use it. The security operative's thinking emerged in his methodical assessment, not violent, but strategically aggressive in a way that reminded Nora of the man's capabilities beyond the gentle father and supportive partner she lived with daily. I need to make some calls, he continued. People who owe me favors from before. We need to understand exactly what Sebastian has and who supplied it. Nora considered their sleeping children at home with Laura, blissfully unaware of threats gathering against their peaceful existence. 3 innocent lives depending on their parents to protect the sanctuary they'd created. Make your calls, she agreed, squeezing his hand. But Damien, we do this legally. No gray areas, nothing that creates greater risk for our family. He nodded, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly at her clear boundaries. Agreed. Information gathering only for now. Decision-making after. As they walked back toward their car, Nora found herself studying her husband with new awareness. The man beside her had faced an impossible moral choice in Damascus and chosen humanity over orders, compassion over duty, willing to sacrifice everything rather than become the executioner his superiors demanded. It only deepened her certainty in him, even as Sebastian's reappearance cast shadows over the life they'd built. The coastal road between Barcelona and their village normally calmed Nora, its winding path alongside azure waters providing a transition between urban energy and their peaceful home. Today, however, each curve only amplified her growing unease. "You're certain the information came through the UN security clearance process?" she asked as Damien navigated a particularly sharp bend. "Almost certainly," he confirmed, eyes fixed on the road. "The timing aligns perfectly. Clearance renewal completed last week. Sebastian appears days later with classified details that were part of my background check, which means someone inside the UN security division is selling information," Nora concluded. "That's a significant breach." Damien nodded grimly. "And potentially useful leverage, if we can confirm the source." The implications spiraled outward, not just a threat to their family, but a security vulnerability with international ramifications. The UN peacekeeping program Damien consulted for dealt with sensitive conflict prevention strategies across multiple nations. A compromised security clearance process endangered operations far beyond their personal concerns. "We should contact Geneva directly," Nora suggested. "Report the breach." "Not yet," Damien countered. "Without knowing who's involved or how deep the compromise goes, we could alert the very people selling the information." His security training was evident in the calculated caution. Assess completely before acting. Understand the full scope of the threat before revealing your awareness. Nora recognized the wisdom, even as her instinct pushed toward immediate action. They fell silent as the car rounded the final curve, revealing their village nestled against the coastline, the late afternoon sun gilding terracotta roofs and whitewashed walls. The sight usually filled Nora with peace. Today it triggered a fierce protectiveness. "I've contacted 2 people from before," Damien said as they parked. "Former colleagues who operated in similar circles but have since moved to private security. If anyone can trace Sebastian's information source, they can—" Nora checked her watch. Nearly 6, meaning Laura would have fed the triplets their early dinner and started the bedtime routine. The normalcy of that thought anchored her, a reminder of what truly mattered amid these resurfacing complications. Inside their home, they found Laura reading to the babies in the nursery, all 3 entranced by her animated storytelling. The peaceful domestic scene contrasted sharply with the tensions of Barcelona, creating a cognitive dissonance that left Nora momentarily disoriented. "Ah, you're back," Laura smiled, setting aside the book. "Perfect timing for goodnight kisses." "How were they?" Nora asked, lifting Elena from her cushioned floor mat. "Angels mostly," Laura reported, helping Lucas into his sleep sack. Sophia decided to redecorate the kitchen with pureed carrots at lunch, but otherwise quite well behaved. The routine of bedtime, changing into sleep clothes, final bottles, lullabies hummed in the dimming light, provided temporary distraction from Sebastian's threats. For 30 precious minutes, nothing existed beyond this room with its 3 cribs and drowsy infants. When the last baby succumbed to sleep, Nora and Damien retreated to their terrace with glasses of wine and the weight of decisions that couldn't be postponed. "If we refuse Sebastian outright, what's the worst-case scenario?" Nora asked, voice low despite the privacy of their secluded home. Damien considered, security assessment merging with personal stakes. "He releases the Kingfisher information to UN oversight. My clearance is revoked immediately. Consulting work ends. Potentially further investigation into my activities post-Damascus, though that's unlikely given the classified nature of everything involved. Financial implications? Significant but not devastating. My UN work provides about 40% of our income. Your NYU position plus investments cover the rest." He took a measured sip of wine. "The greater cost would be purpose. I've found meaning in the peacekeeping work that I'd hate to lose." Nora nodded, appreciating his honesty. "And if we appear to cooperate temporarily, we gain time, potentially gather evidence of Sebastian's current illegal activities to use as counter-leverage." Damien's expression darkened. "But it puts you in legal jeopardy, potentially exposes you to prosecution if his operations are as illegal as they sound." The unspoken third option hung between them, attempting to neutralize Sebastian's threat directly through whatever connections Damien still maintained from his former life. The most efficient solution, perhaps, but one that potentially crossed ethical lines neither wanted to breach. "There's something we haven't discussed," Nora said finally. "What if we simply tell the truth? Damien looked up, brow furrowed in confusion. About everything. Go directly to your UN supervisors, disclose the classified details. Sebastian is threatening to reveal. Explain the circumstances of Damascus and your actions. She leaned forward, conviction growing as she spoke. You didn't follow an unethical order. You saved innocent lives at great personal risk. Why is that something to hide? Because officially, it never happened, Damien replied. And because governments don't appreciate operatives who make independent moral judgments in the field, even correct ones. But you're not that operative anymore, Nora countered. You're a consultant with a distinguished record who, when faced with an illegal order years ago, chose the humanitarian option. In today's UN, that might be valued rather than condemned. Damien fell silent, considering. The possibility clearly hadn't occurred to him that what had once been career-ending might now, years later in a different context, be viewed differently. It's risky, he said finally. Once disclosed, we can't control the narrative. Neither can Sebastian, Nora pointed out. His leverage exists only while the information remains secret. Once you've disclosed it yourself, he has nothing. Their discussion was interrupted by Damien's phone vibrating on the table. The screen displayed an unfamiliar international number. Anders, he explained, recognizing the caller ID. My former colleague in Stockholm. The conversation that followed was brief, conducted in professional shorthand that Nora couldn't fully interpret. When Damien disconnected, his expression had shifted from uncertainty to focused intensity. Sebastian's source is confirmed. Michel Duval, Deputy Director of Security Clearance at the UN Geneva office. Apparently, he's been selling information for approximately 6 months, primarily to private intelligence firms and corporate security operations. Damien set the phone down carefully. Anders says he's under internal investigation already, though they're moving slowly to identify all his contacts. So Sebastian caught him just before he was exposed, Nora mused. Desperate timing on both sides. Damien nodded. Anders also confirmed something else. The Kingfisher file in circulation is incomplete. It contains the operational outline and my involvement, but not the aftermath or my actions regarding the scientist's family. Meaning Sebastian doesn't actually know you defied orders, Nora realized. He assumes you followed them and are vulnerable because of it. He's operating with partial intelligence, Damien agreed, the strategist in him recognizing both the threat and opportunity this created, which gives us an advantage he doesn't realize. They sat in contemplative silence, the Mediterranean stretching dark and vast before them, until Nora reached a decision. I'll meet with him tomorrow, she said firmly. Alone, as he expects. I'll appear to consider his proposal, ask for details about what exactly he needs from me. The more specific information we have about his current operations, the stronger our position. Damien frowned. It's too risky. He's desperate and cornered, unpredictable. He's also arrogant and overconfident, Nora countered. He believes he has leverage he doesn't fully understand. Meanwhile, I spent 5 years watching him operate. I know his tactics, his tells, his weaknesses. She reached for Damien's hand, her grip firm and certain. Trust me to handle Sebastian while you focus on the UN security breach. I'm not the vulnerable woman who fled New York 18 months ago. I'm stronger now, with far more to protect. Her gaze drifted toward the nursery where their children slept, and Damien followed her line of sight, understanding dawning in his expression. The stakes had transformed completely from their individual careers or reputations to the sanctuary they'd created for 3 innocent lives. All right, he agreed finally. But we establish clear parameters and contingencies, time limits, check-ins, emergency responses, full security protocol. Nora nodded, feeling a strange calm settle over her. Unlike the paralyzing shock of Sebastian's betrayal 18 months ago, this threat found her centered in unshakable certainty about what and who truly mattered. Tomorrow we begin, she said, raising her glass in grim determination. And Sebastian discovers he's not the only one who can execute a strategic plan. The afternoon sun beat down on Barcelona's Olympic port as Nora approached the waterfront restaurant Sebastian had selected for their second meeting. Her linen dress, deceptively simple but expertly tailored, projected casual confidence rather than the corporate armor of yesterday's encounter. A deliberate choice, letting Sebastian believe she'd relaxed her guard. He waited at an outside table, performance casual in designer jeans and a crisp button-down, sunglasses masking his expression until she sat across from him. You look refreshed, he observed, removing the glasses. Motherhood hasn't diminished your style, I see. Nora ignored the backhanded compliment. I've considered your proposal, and... Sebastian leaned forward, anticipation evident in his posture. I need specifics before committing to anything. Exactly what services you're expecting, what entities are involved, and what protections you're offering. She kept her tone businesslike, neither rejecting nor accepting. I don't work with ambiguity. Sebastian smiled, clearly interpreting her response as tentative agreement. Always the thorough analyst. Some things never change. He withdrew a tablet from his messenger bag, pulling up spreadsheets and corporate structures that he turned toward her. 8 entities, primarily based in Singapore and the UAE, handling investment flows from sources in former Soviet republics and certain South American interests. The regulatory challenges involve cross-border verification and reporting requirements. Translation: money laundering for oligarchs and drug cartels. Nora maintained a neutral expression as she scanned the documents, mentally cataloging names, amounts, and jurisdictions, evidence rather than engagement. The compensation structure is quite generous, Sebastian continued, sliding a separate document toward her. Quarterly payments through a shell company registered in the Caymans, untraceable to either of us. Nora examined the figures, substantial enough to confirm the illegality of whatever operations these masked. And what guarantees do I have regarding the Damien situation? All materials regarding Operation Kingfisher remain securely in my possession, Sebastian replied smoothly. Unavailable to any authority so long as our arrangement remains productive. I'll need 3 days to review everything properly, Nora said, maintaining the businesslike demeanor while her pulse quickened at what Sebastian had just unwittingly revealed. If I'm satisfied with the protections and parameters, we can proceed. Sebastian's smile broadened, victory gleaming in his eyes. I knew you'd be pragmatic about this, Nora. You always understood how the game is really played. I understand protecting what matters, she corrected, gathering her purse. Send the complete documentation to my secure email. I'll contact you when I've completed my analysis. As she stood to leave, Sebastian caught her wrist, a controlling gesture identical to his grip during yesterday's meeting. Don't try to be clever about this, Nora. I've taken precautions to ensure the Kingfisher information reaches multiple outlets simultaneously if anything happens to me, or if certain financial transactions don't proceed as expected. She extracted her arm deliberately. I built my career on thoroughness, Sebastian. Allow me the professional courtesy of due diligence. His grip relaxed, confidence returning. 3 days, he agreed. Then we formalize our arrangement. Nora walked away, maintaining unhurried steps, despite the urge to run from his toxic presence. Only when she reached the prearranged meeting point, a hotel lobby 2 blocks away, did her professional mask slip slightly. Damien rose from a leather armchair as she approached, concern evident in his expression. What happened? He took the bait, she confirmed, voice low as they moved toward a quiet corner. Showed me everything. Corporate structures, financial flows, compensation arrangements, all documented on his tablet, which he handled carelessly enough for the remote access program to deploy. Damien nodded, relief visible in the relaxing of his shoulders. While she'd met with Sebastian, he'd been monitoring the data transmission from the sophisticated program. They'd installed on her phone technology from his security days that created a digital bridge to any device that came within specific proximity. How much did you access? He asked. From what I could see on the screen, his entire operational database. Nora allowed herself a small smile of grim satisfaction, including a folder labeled Kingfisher with what appeared to be the original documents. Perfect, Damien murmured, checking his phone where data continued transferring from Sebastian's compromised tablet. The program will extract everything remotely. He'll never know we've accessed his files. The elegant simplicity of their countermove satisfied something in Nora that had been wounded by Sebastian's original betrayal. 18 months ago, he had manipulated her through emotional blindsides. Today, she had outmaneuvered him through careful strategy and technological sophistication. What about your UN contact? She asked as they moved toward the hotel exit. Meeting confirmed for tomorrow morning in Geneva, Damien replied. I'm taking the early flight. Once we have Sebastian's files fully analyzed, I'll have concrete evidence of the security breach to present along with my full disclosure about Damascus. They stepped into Barcelona's afternoon sunlight, moving purposefully toward the parking garage where they'd left their car. The crowds of tourists and locals parted around them, unaware of the high-stakes exchange of information and leverage occurring in their midst. Do you think they'll understand? Nora asked quietly as they reached the car. About your decision in Damascus? Damien considered the question as he unlocked the doors. I don't know, he admitted finally. But living with this hanging over us indefinitely isn't an option. Whatever consequences come, we'll face them directly. The The certainty in his voice steadied her. This was the fundamental difference between the man she'd almost married and the man who now shared her life. Sebastian had always avoided consequences through manipulation and deception, while Damien confronted them with integrity and transparency. They drove in companionable silence, each processing the events of the day and preparing for tomorrow's resolution. As they approached the coastal road leading to their village, Damien's phone rang through the car's speaker system. "Damien Reyes," he answered, using the hands-free option. "Mr. Reyes." The voice was unfamiliar, heavily accented. "I believe you have acquired something that doesn't belong to you." Nora felt cold dread settle in her stomach as Damien's expression hardened. "Who is this?" he asked, voice shifting subtly into the controlled precision of his security training. "Someone who shares mutual interests with Sebastian Porter," the voice replied. "Specifically, interest in certain files you are currently extracting from his systems." Damien's eyes met Nora's briefly, a silent warning passing between them. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please, Mr. Reyes, your background suggests you understand the foolishness of denials at this stage." The caller's tone remained pleasant despite the implicit threat. "My associates are currently at your charming coastal property. Your nanny and children appear to be enjoying the afternoon's sunshine on your terrace." Terror jolted through Nora's body, electric and immediate. "Laura," she whispered, reaching instinctively for her phone to check the security camera feed. "Don't," Damien cautioned, his voice preternaturally calm despite the obvious tension in his posture. To the caller he said, "What do you want?" "Simple reciprocity. You've accessed information valuable to us. We've acquired leverage valuable to you." The voice maintained its chilling pleasantness. "Return to Barcelona immediately. Hotel Arts, room 3042. Bring the device containing the extracted files. If anyone touches my family," Damien began, the threat evident in his tone. "No one will harm them if you comply promptly," the caller interrupted. "You have 1 hour." The call disconnected, leaving deafening silence in the car. Damien immediately pulled over to the roadside, bringing up the security feed on his phone. The camera revealed Laura sitting peacefully on the terrace with the triplets playing nearby, normal except for the man visible at the edge of the frame, his casual stance belied by the alertness in his posture and the bulge of a concealed weapon under his light jacket. "Professional," Damien observed grimly. "Military trained, judging by his positioning." Nora fought rising panic, forcing herself to think clearly through the fear. "Who are they?" "Sebastian mentioned South American interests," Damien replied, already turning the car back toward Barcelona. "Likely cartel security. They employ former special forces operators for high-value operations." The implications crystallized with terrifying clarity. Sebastian's financial operations weren't merely gray-area tax evasion but serious organized crime involvement. His desperation suddenly made perfect sense. Not just professional rehabilitation but potentially his life depended on these arrangements proceeding. "We need to call the police," Nora insisted, reaching for her phone. "Not yet," Damien countered, his expression revealing calculations running beneath his outward calm. "If these are who I suspect, they have protocols for police involvement. The first sign of authorities would trigger immediate action against hostages." The clinical terminology, hostages, sent fresh terror through Nora's body. Their babies and Laura, innocent lives now pawns in Sebastian's desperation and criminal entanglements. "What do we do?" she whispered, fighting to maintain composure. Damien's hands tightened on the steering wheel as he accelerated back toward Barcelona. "I need to think like them, anticipate their play." His security training visibly reasserted itself. The calm assessment of threats, identification of vulnerabilities, calculation of strategic responses. Nora watched the transformation with equal parts relief and alarm. The gentle father and supportive partner receded slightly as the highly trained operative emerged from dormancy. "They won't harm the children immediately," he said, voice clinically detached. "They're leverage, not targets. Their goal is recovering whatever we've accessed from Sebastian's files and ensuring our silence." "If we give them the files, will they release our family?" Nora asked, clinging to rationality despite the panic threatening to overwhelm her. Damien's expression darkened. "Unlikely. Once they confirm we've seen the contents, we become permanent liabilities." The implication hung between them. This wasn't a simple exchange, but a potential death sentence for their entire family. "I have 2 former colleagues in Spain," Damien continued, mind visibly working through options, "both with tactical experience, both trustworthy. I need to contact them while maintaining the appearance of compliance." He handed Nora his phone. Text Anders in Stockholm. Code phrase, Pacific Sunset requires immediate assistance. He'll understand. As she typed with trembling fingers, Damien continued thinking aloud. They'll expect me to come alone to the hotel, attempted heroics. That's what Sebastian would have told them about my background. What will you do instead? Nora asked, sending the coded message. We go together, he replied, surprising her. Presenting his frightened parents, willing to cooperate fully to protect our children. No resistance, no deception. But that's exactly what they want, Nora protested. Which makes it unexpected, Damien explained. They're anticipating security countermeasures, not apparent submission. It creates opportunities they won't be watching for. Trust in his expertise battled with maternal terror in Nora's heart. The stakes had never been higher, not financial ruin or professional disgrace, but 3 innocent lives hanging in the balance. I need you to tell me right now, she said, voice steadying despite her fear. Can you protect our family, truly? Damien glanced away from the road briefly, his eyes meeting hers with absolute certainty. Yes, but I need your complete trust and cooperation. You have it, she replied without hesitation. Whatever complicated history had resurfaced through Sebastian's manipulations, one truth remained unshakable. Damien had never given her reason to doubt him, not once in their 18 months together. As they raced back toward Barcelona, Nora felt a strange calm replacing her initial panic. Together they possessed unique capabilities, her strategic financial mind and his tactical security expertise, both now focused entirely on protecting what mattered most. Sebastian had inadvertently created a situation that revealed the true strength of their partnership, not the gentle domesticity of their coastal life, but the bedrock resilience that had drawn them together from the beginning. 2 people who, when faced with impossible circumstances, found clarity and purpose rather than surrender. Tell me the plan, she said as Barcelona's skyline appeared on the horizon. Every detail. Damien nodded, beginning a meticulously outlined strategy that would determine whether their family survived the day intact or became collateral damage in Sebastian's desperate scramble for self-preservation. Hotel Arts loomed before them, its gleaming facade now menacing rather than luxurious. Nora gripped Damien's hand as they crossed the marble lobby, maintaining the appearance of frightened parents while scanning for surveillance. Another skill acquired during her financial career, identifying who watched from peripheral positions. Southeast corner, blue shirt, she murmured, spotting one observer pretending to read a newspaper. And bartender, watching too intently. Damien squeezed her hand in acknowledgement, impressed by her perception despite the circumstances. They entered the elevator alone, a momentary privacy that allowed them to exchange a meaningful glance, confirmation that the plan remained active despite the visible security. Remember, Damien whispered as the elevator approached the 30th floor. Whatever happens, follow my lead. No improvisation. Nora nodded, steeling herself as the doors opened. They walked hand in hand down the luxurious corridor, stopping before room 3042. Damien knocked twice, his posture deliberately non-threatening. The door opened to reveal Sebastian, his expression a complex mixture of triumph and apprehension. Behind him stood 2 men, one by the window overlooking Barcelona, another near the bedroom doorway. Both carried themselves with military precision despite their casual clothing. You made good time, Sebastian observed, gesturing them inside. Parenthood clearly motivates prompt responses. Nora bit back the venomous reply that rose to her lips, maintaining the frightened spouse persona they'd agreed upon. Damien stepped slightly ahead of her, protective but compliant. We brought what you asked for, he said, removing a thumb drive from his pocket. Everything we accessed. We haven't shared it with anyone. The man by the window approached, taking the device from Damien's outstretched hand. He was older, perhaps 50, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that assessed threats professionally. Clearly the leader of whatever security team Sebastian had engaged. This contains all the extracted files? The man asked, his accent confirming South American origins. Yes, Damien replied, maintaining eye contact. We only want our family safe. We're not interested in whatever business arrangements you have. The man nodded to his colleague, who took the drive to a laptop set up on the desk. Sebastian hovered nearby, tension evident in his posture as the files were verified. Your history suggests you wouldn't surrender so easily, Mr. Reyes, the leader observed, studying Damien with professional curiosity. Damascus created quite a different impression of your methods. Damascus was before I had children, Damien replied simply. Priorities change. Something like understanding flickered in the man's eyes, the recognition of one professional for another, acknowledging the transformation family created in even the most dedicated operatives. It's all here, the second man confirmed from the laptop. Financial structures, client lists, operational protocols. And the Kingfisher file. Sebastian visibly relaxed, triumph replacing anxiety in his expression. I told you they'd be reasonable when properly motivated. The leader ignored him, attention remaining fixed on Damien. You understand this creates a permanent complication. Your knowledge doesn't disappear with the files. We want no part of this, Nora interjected, stepping forward. Release our family, and you'll never hear from us again. Sebastian laughed, the sound startlingly harsh in the tense room. Always a negotiator, Nora. But this isn't a corporate acquisition where everyone walks away satisfied. The leader raised his hand slightly, silencing Sebastian with the subtle gesture. Your children's safety concerns you, understandable. If you've been completely honest with us, there's no reason for permanent solutions. Hope flickered briefly before Nora registered the careful phrasing, if you've been completely honest. The conditional hung in the air, a transparent threat wrapped in professional courtesy. I've authorized the release of the Kingfisher file to multiple recipients, Damien said suddenly, drawing all attention back to him. Triggered automatically, if we don't check in within the hour. The leader's expression didn't change, but his posture shifted subtly, the recalibration of threat assessment. That would be unfortunate for your UN career. My career means nothing compared to my family, Damien replied evenly. I've also included evidence linking Sebastian to your financial operations. Insurance, you might say. Sebastian stepped forward, face flushing with anger. You're bluffing. You had no time to set up dead man switches. I've had 18 months since you first threatened us, Damien countered, the lie delivered with perfect conviction. Did you think I wouldn't prepare contingencies once you reappeared? Uncertainty flickered across Sebastian's features, the first crack in his confident facade. He turned to the leader, who remained impassively calculating, weighing new variables in the equation. If what you claim is true, the leader said finally, mutual destruction benefits no one. Exactly, Damien agreed. Which is why I propose a simple solution. We all walk away. You retain your financial operations, I keep my family safe, and Sebastian continues whatever arrangement you have with him. The leader studied him silently, professional respect evident beneath his neutral expression. After a moment that stretched painfully, he nodded once. Ricardo, he said to his colleague, verify the status of the family property. The second man made a brief call in Spanish, listening to the response before confirming, all normal, no authorities. The leader turned back to Damien. If your dead man switch is genuine, you have no motivation to involve authorities after your family is released. None whatsoever, Damien confirmed. Our only interest is returning to our children. Sebastian stepped forward, protest forming on his lips, but the leader silenced him with a sharp gesture. We have confirmation that the extracted files are recovered. The threat is neutralized. He turned to Sebastian. Your personal vendetta is not our concern. This operation concludes now. You can't seriously believe him, Sebastian objected, desperation creeping into his voice. This man was a top-tier operative. He's manipulating you. He is a father protecting his children, the leader corrected, his tone suggesting the conversation was closed. Something you might not understand, but I do. The implied dismissal pushed Sebastian over some internal edge. With surprising speed, he lunged toward the desk, grabbing a handgun that had been partially concealed beside the laptop. This ends now, he snarled, raising the weapon toward Damien. What happened next unfolded with cinematic precision. The leader moved with unexpected swiftness, intercepting Sebastian's arm as Damien simultaneously pushed Nora toward the floor, shielding her with his body. A brief struggle, a single muffled shot from the weapon, and then silence. When Nora dared look up, Sebastian lay on the plush carpet, blood spreading across his chest from where the bullet had entered during the struggle. The leader stood over him, expression grim but unsurprised, as if the outcome represented an anticipated contingency rather than a shock. A regrettable complication, he observed, turning to his colleague. Prepare for immediate extraction. Nora stared at Sebastian's motionless form, numb shock replacing fear. Death, so clinical and final, transformed the man who had manipulated and threatened them into merely an obstacle requiring removal. Damien helped her to her feet, maintaining his protective position between her and the others. Our arrangement? He asked the leader, voice steady despite the violence they'd just witnessed. Remains in effect, the leader confirmed, already organizing their departure with practiced efficiency. Your family will be released immediately. This incident never occurred. Sebastian, Nora managed, still processing the sudden elimination of someone who had once been central to her life. An unfortunate accident while traveling, the leader replied. These things happen to those who make powerful enemies. Within minutes, they received confirmation that the men at their coastal home had departed, leaving Laura and the triplets unharmed and unaware of the danger that had briefly surrounded them. The leader and his colleague prepared to vanish equally efficiently, taking Sebastian's body and all evidence of their presence with practiced professionalism. At the door, the leader paused briefly. "Mr. Reyes," he said, professional respect evident in his tone. "Your reputation was not exaggerated, despite your current domestic priorities. Should your situation ever change, certain employers would value your particular expertise." "My situation won't change," Damien replied firmly, arm tightening around Nora's shoulders. The leader nodded once, accepting the answer without argument. "Then I suggest you maintain your UN position and peaceful family life with appropriate appreciation for their rarity. Few in our profession find such satisfactory conclusions." Then they were gone, taking Sebastian and the threats he had revived with them, leaving Nora and Damien standing alone in the suddenly silent hotel room. "Is it over?" Nora whispered, the events of the past hour still processing through her consciousness. "Yes," Damien confirmed, guiding her gently toward the door. "They have what they wanted, and Sebastian can no longer threaten anyone." The finality of Sebastian's death, the abrupt elimination of someone who had once been her future, left Nora strangely hollow. Not grief, certainly, but the disorienting awareness that a chapter had closed permanently, without resolution or understanding. They left the hotel separately from the others, maintaining normal appearances despite the extraordinary circumstances they'd just navigated. In the car, heading back toward their coastal home, toward their children whose safety had been momentarily threatened, Nora finally found her voice again. "Did you know it would end this way?" she asked quietly. Damien's hands remained steady on the wheel, though tension still lingered in his shoulders. "I anticipated Sebastian might become a liability to his own associates once the files were recovered. His emotional involvement made him unpredictable, dangerous. You manipulated the situation," Nora realized. "The dead man switched bluff, positioning him as the greater risk. I created conditions where his elimination became the logical choice for professionals," Damien corrected. "There's a difference. The distinction might have troubled her once, this calculating aspect of the man she'd married, his ability to anticipate and influence lethal outcomes without direct action. Instead, she found herself grateful for exactly the skills and background Sebastian had attempted to use against them. "Thank you," she said simply, "for protecting our family." Damien reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. Always, as they approached the village, anxiety about their children finally overtook the numbing shock of Sebastian's death. They parked haphazardly in the driveway, both moving with barely restrained urgency into the house where Laura greeted them with cheerful normalcy. "You're back early," she exclaimed. "The babies are just waking from their afternoon nap. Any visitors today?" Damien asked casually, eyes already scanning for any remaining threats. "Just the usual delivery man," Laura replied, oblivious to the significance of her answer. "Is everything all right? You both look exhausted." "Just a difficult meeting in Barcelona," Nora explained, already moving toward the nursery where familiar babbling indicated their children were indeed awake. The sight of 3 healthy, happy babies, Lucas standing in his crib, Elena contentedly playing with her stuffed rabbit, Sophia attempting to climb over the rail despite all safety measures, released something tight and painful in Nora's chest. They were safe, untouched by the violence and manipulation that had briefly threatened their peaceful existence. Damien appeared beside her, emotion evident in his usually controlled expression as he lifted Lucas into his arms. "Everything okay here, champion?" he asked, voice rough with suppressed feeling. "Dada," Lucas replied happily, patting his father's face with chubby hands that knew nothing of danger or threat. They spent the remainder of the day in intensified awareness of ordinary blessings, bath time with 3 squirming, giggling babies, dinner on the terrace as the sun set over the Mediterranean, bedtime stories read with greater emotion than usual. When the triplets finally slept, Nora and Damien retreated to their bedroom, both physically and emotionally exhausted. "I still need to address the UN situation," Damien said as they prepared for bed, the day's events still processing through both their minds. "The security breach, if nothing else, requires attention." Without mentioning Sebastian, Nora added, understanding the complexities. Now that he was dead, officially in an accident that would likely be reported in coming days, their strategy required adjustment. "Yes, I'll present the breach evidence without revealing its source." Damien sat heavily on the edge of the bed, the adrenaline crash finally catching up with him. "As for Kingfisher, I still believe disclosure is the right approach, not because of Sebastian's threats, but because carrying it alone has gone on long enough. Nora sat beside him, taking his hand. Whatever happens with the UN, we'll manage. What matters is that our family is safe, together. He nodded, drawing her into his arms, both seeking comfort in physical connection after the day's emotional turmoil. They held each other in silence, processing separately yet together the reality that they had faced extraordinary threats and emerged intact. Their family preserved, their future secure, the shadows of past secrets on the verge of dissipation. When they made love that night, it carried a different quality than their usual connection. More urgent, more grateful, infused with the heightened awareness that comes from narrowly averted catastrophe. Each touch affirmed life. Each kiss promised continuation. Each shared breath rejected the violence and manipulation that had briefly threatened everything they valued. Afterward, as Nora drifted toward sleep in Damien's arms, she realized something fundamental had shifted. The professional identities that had defined them before they met, high-powered financial executive, elite security operative, had fully transfigured into something more essential and more valuable. Partners, parents, protectors of the family they'd created together. Sebastian's final desperate attempt to control and manipulate had inadvertently completed their transformation, burning away any remaining attachments to former selves and former lives. "We should stay in Spain," she murmured, the decision crystallizing with sudden clarity. Not just through October. Permanently. Damien's arms tightened around her. "What about NYU? Your program? I can develop online modules, visit for intensive teaching periods when needed." She nestled closer, certainty growing. "The triplets belong here, in sunshine and fresh air, away from the complications of our former world." "Are you certain?" he asked, though she heard hope in his question rather than doubt. "After today, absolutely." She raised herself on one elbow to look into his eyes. "Life is too precious, too fragile to compromise for career expectations or traditional paths. Our family deserves the peace we've found here." His smile in the moonlight confirmed shared understanding. The decision wasn't retreat or escape, but deliberate choice, prioritizing what truly mattered over conventional definitions of success or obligation. As they drifted towards sleep, the Mediterranean breeze carrying the scent of jasmine through open windows, the sound of waves a gentle constant in the background, Nora felt profound gratitude replace the day's terror and tension. Their unlikely beginning, a chance meeting after devastating betrayal, an impulsive marriage that defied conventional timelines, the unexpected blessing of triplets, had evolved into something neither could have anticipated but both now recognized as essential. A family forged through challenge, defined by choice rather than expectation, and protected with absolute commitment. Sebastian's reappearance and subsequent elimination had served only to confirm what they already knew, that together, they possessed everything necessary to face whatever complications the future might hold, not as the people they had once been, but as the partnership they had deliberately created. In the nursery down the hall, 3 sleeping babies, unaware of dangers narrowly averted, oblivious to the complex histories that had converged to create their existence, embodied everything worth protecting, everything worth choosing, everything worth becoming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, disclosing security breaches, restructuring professional obligations, potentially relocating permanently to this coastal sanctuary. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of threat and preservation, Nora and Damien simply held each other, grateful for second chances, unexpected gifts, and the profound strength of choosing love over fear, authenticity over performance, and family over everything else. My amazing viewers and beautiful family, from the peaceful family life Nora and Damien built together, to the heart-stopping danger when Sebastian threatened everything they hold dear, this journey has taken us through the ultimate test of their unexpected love. If those triplets stole your heart as much as they did mine, drop a 3 love emojis in the comments. And tell me, which moment had you holding your breath? Was it when they discovered their babies were in danger? When Damien's mysterious past fully emerged? Or that shocking final confrontation that changed everything? Remember, our Love and Twilight's family thrives on your engagement. Every comment, like, and share helps our family grow and brings these passionate stories to more viewers who appreciate romance with real emotional depth and unexpected twists. Until next time, keep believing in love that defies all odds and the extraordinary power of choosing what truly matters. And most importantly, don't forget to subscribe.